cooler you are with yourself, the cooler you're going to be with the people around you. Hey, you, how's it going? How are you? Welcome to this, your Tuesday edition of the show. Yeah, your Tuesday. Like every day that goes by, that's another step that you are taking forward. You're doing awesome. Hang in there. You got this. You are a badass. And if you need something, if you need to talk, if there's anything I can do for you to make your Tuesday better, hit me up. I'm here with you. I'm here for you. At ADSXE. It's where you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at ADSXE. Put it in your phone now in case you need it later. So I'm still here in Macedonia on a bit of an adventure that started a month ago when my father had, well, like I said yesterday, the perfect storm of a situation. All these things going wrong with him physically that put him in the hospital in a near-death situation. And that was nearly it. Fortunately, it wasn't, though. Fortunately, I had time to get to Kosovo. Fortunately, I had time to get next to his side and, well, to get some more time with him. And he was supposed to recover pretty quickly. He was supposed to be what they call fit to fly in like 3 or 4 days. It's a month later, and that's not the case. I think maybe I'm in the home stretch now. I think maybe I'm about to overcome that final hurdle, get him on the plane, get him the necessary oxygen, get him the necessary medical support on the ground in the hospital in Macedonia to get him on a plane when he's not able to do stairs, get him a medical escort that can deal with all the tubes that are coming out of him at the moment and make sure that he's got enough oxygen on the plane. Apparently he takes 2 to 3 liters an hour, and that's a whole situation that you got to organize with the airport staff and with the airline staff. And then I've got to get him through the airport in Istanbul onto a plane that takes us to LAX, get through the 16-hour journey when he is not really going to be in a condition where he's loving a 16-hour journey, and get him to Los Angeles where I can connect with a medical transport to get him to an emergency room to immediately examine a whole bunch of his stuff. It's one last hurdle, but it's a lot. And I don't know if you've ever tried dealing with airlines in foreign languages. You have to organize this stuff in the local office. You can't just call the 800 number of Turkish Airlines. They'll refer you to the Macedonian office. But my Macedonian, I'm just going to say it, not awesome. Their English, perhaps not the greatest. So it's been interesting. I was like, cool, all I have to do is get him on a plane. This long and winding journey of caring for my father in a foreign country for the past month, dealing with 3 different hospitals, crossing an international border in an ambulance with lights flashing so I could go to a place where a vitally important life-saving piece of medical equipment was available when it wasn't available in Kosovo. All of that is about to come to an end. And then the last hurdle turned out, like everything else has in the last month, to be not easy. Pretty complicated. Tough to figure out what to do with. Sorry, I am recording this into my phone, and that was an alarm I had set in America for something. So it's a lot. Caring for someone who is in this situation is a lot. There's no two ways about it. I love my father. I love him. I think he's the greatest. I love my dad. But he's kind of put me in a tough spot, tough situation. You know the old expression, doctors don't like to take medicine or something like that? Well, my father's a lawyer. My father's a lawyer whose life has been documents and paperwork and making sure I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So you would think that a lawyer with a heart condition, as my father has had for the past 10 or so years, would have, written some stuff down for this kind of eventuality. No, not so much. My dad is an adventurous fellow who has lived his life like there is an inexhaustible amount of time. And, well, obviously there isn't for anyone, but he hasn't wanted to prepare for these circumstances as much as I've asked him to over the years. So, like I said, he's put me in an interesting situation. And if you have ever cared for a relative, a friend, a loved one in a similar situation, you know this. It takes a lot. I don't begrudge it, but it is it's one of those things that started off as a sprint. I was going to sprint to a different country and sprint back with my dad. And I've been running at sprint speed for the last month, but it's turned into a marathon. And I started to do this podcast because to keep my sanity, I had to keep the conversations that you and I were having going. I just had to. Otherwise, I wouldn't make it. I would not. Said it before, I will say it again. Kosovo, I get why my father likes it so much. It's interesting. It's different. It's exciting. It's a newer country. There's a lot going on. The people are amazing. They will give you the shirt off of your back. The food is outrageous. And everything in places like Kosovo and Macedonia is very affordable. Like, if you were thinking of taking an international vacation, Macedonia is beautiful. The food and the hotels are just a fraction of the price that they are in America, and they're great. I would heartily recommend it. I get why my father likes all this stuff. I get why he made his life out here for the last 15 years, but he put me in a tough spot. And you know this, if you have ever been in a situation where you are caring for somebody else, it can take an awful lot out of you. I started this podcast to discuss what was going on in your life, discuss what was going on in the lives of people listening, to talk things out, to get through them. And almost immediately I got a message from someone called Laura, who said she gets what I'm going through. She said, I take care of my father, who is vision impaired. We had a rough weekend at the hospital. He had a fall. So I understand the challenge and responsibility of caring for a parent, and support you 100%. And I told her my hope for the podcast is that this can be a place where people can share what's going on in their lives. And then you, me, all of us, we can help talk it out. I'm not a shrink. I'm not a therapist. I am in no way, shape, or form qualified to dispense advice. But I think when you talk things through, when you hear things said out loud, all of a sudden they become a little bit more clear. All of a sudden they make a little bit more sense. And in talking to Laura, she said, I think there's a huge struggle between providing adequate care and attention to a parent while also living your life, doing the things that make you happy. You want to do everything you can for your mom, your dad, the person that is in a rough spot, that is one of the people that matters to you the most. You're constantly making sacrifices to do it. And yet, when it comes to doing something like, taking a couple days out of town, there's a sense of guilt for doing it. Because, well, maybe that's time and effort you could spend doing extra things for the parent, extra things for the person that you love. And it can be a constant and never-ending battle. She said, I think people in situations like this deserve not to feel guilty in doing things for themselves, but need to constantly be reminded. And I wanted to remind and affirm people of that, and in turn, remind myself. And yeah, Laura, you're so right. And anyone who's going through this probably knows exactly what you're talking about. Caring for somebody is hard work. It's draining in every way, emotionally, physically, mentally. My dad's situation has not been easy. Like I said, it was supposed to be this 3-day trip. And every time I turn around, there's a new complication. Every time I turn around, there's a new ailment. Every time I turn around, there's something new that is going to stop him from getting up and going home. It started with, like I said, the perfect storm of a medical situation that put him in the hospital. Why he's in the hospital now has nothing to do with that a month later. He got to the hospital and they're like, okay, we're getting him stable. We are dealing with the stuff that put him in. We're dealing with... I'll say it. I don't think there's any shame in it. I don't think my father would mind people knowing. We're dealing with the internal bleeding he's experiencing. And when he was bleeding internally, he was losing a lot of blood. That caused low blood pressure. That caused, it's not good. all of that mercifully got stabilized pretty quickly. And then because he has a heart situation, because he has a pacemaker, the cardiologist at the hospital was like, "Hey, let me just do a checkup on the pacemaker, see how we're doing before we get onto the plane." And he was like, yeah, your dad must have really given this thing a workout. It needs a new battery. I was like, okay, get a new battery. Well, here's the thing. It's not available in this country because it's Kosovo. There's weird things happening at the border with customs, especially because it's so close to the holidays. We don't know if we can get this battery to him in time. Could take 15 to 20 days. But if you go to Macedonia, there's a facility there that might have one. So, like I said, here we are later, however many weeks later it is, here I am in Macedonia, having successfully gotten my father his pacemaker battery. And his heart's doing what it needs to do. And if he didn't have that, he might not have made it. So it's been a nail-biting, adventurous excursion that involved crossing, like I said, international borders in ambulances with lights flashing. But when you're caring for someone, stuff like this pops up. Things get more complicated all the time. Things get more difficult all the time. And I was exhausted. I really was, mentally, physically, all of the above. I was exhausted. I was starting to lose my patience with the situation. Not with my father, but every time somebody turned around and said, "Hey, you know this thing that you thought was going to be simple? No, it's going to be more expensive and more complicated than we said initially." I was about to bite someone's freaking head off just because I was worn the hell out. But something interesting happened when we went from Kosovo to Macedonia. In Kosovo, every single day, I was staying at my dad's apartment. But every single day, I would take a cab to the hospital. Now, a cab to the hospital, this is another thing that's outrageously cheap. I think it was like €2 or something like that. That's what I usually paid for a 15-minute cab ride, which comes to, I don't know, $3-4. But it also involved, well, I had to ask somebody to call a cab for me because my phone wasn't working in Kosovo the way my phone provider said it would. So I'd have to go to my dad's landlord, ask him to call the phone, ask him to call the cab company, get into the cab company, use my Google Translate to tell them where I was going, get from there to the hospital where I was immediately dealing with everything. From the moment I stepped through the hospital doors, there was someone talking to me and talking at me, and it was a bit of a marathon just to get up to the second floor where my father's room was. And it started to wear me the hell out because from the moment I woke up in the morning, I was dealing with problems and other people. And like I said, it was taking a toll on me. And I have a long fuse. It was getting progressively shorter. But something interesting and very fortunate happened to me when we went to Macedonia, which is, obviously my dad didn't have an apartment for me to stay in here. There's a hotel right around the corner for the hospital, which, by the way, is beautiful, like amazing. One of the nicest hotels I've ever been fortunate enough to stay in, and cost me a whopping $45 a night. Like, I don't get it. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Like I said, absolutely 1,000,000% would come back here on vacation. It's called the Mirror Hotel. And if you're ever considering exploring Skopje or Petrovic in Macedonia, this would be a great place for you to spend a couple of nights. People here are awesome. And the food is outrageous. But the other thing is, it's closer to the hospital than my dad's apartment was. So what I found was happening was, I was like, I could take the little free shuttle that they have, but when I call that, it takes 15 minutes to arrive. And this is like a 5 to 7 minute walk. It's cold in Macedonia this time of year, but I started doing the walk. And I'm so glad that I did, because I was inadvertently, when I was taking the walk, getting some fresh air, getting some exercise, stretching my legs. And here's the other thing, not dealing with people. There was nothing I could do on this walk. I couldn't make phone calls. I couldn't do anything other than just walk, be alone with my thoughts. It was a little break. 5 to 7 minutes, brisk walk. Doesn't sound like much, but it was everything. I found when I started walking to and from the hospital, when I gave myself a little break from constantly interfacing with emails and doctors and phones and Google Translate apps and everything that it's taken to get from A to B since I got here, all of a sudden, I felt different walking into the hospital. I didn't feel like I was in fight or flight mode. I didn't feel like I was gearing up for the worst. It was 5 to 7 minutes. Little break during what has been an excruciating situation for the last couple of months. But it made such a difference. And so, I'm telling you, I don't know what the situation is for you. I don't know if you are caring for someone like me and Laura. I don't know if you are looking after your kids. I don't know if you are in a job that's very demanding. I don't know what your situation is, but I do know this. Every one of us, especially over the last couple of years with the COVID situation, every last one of us, I think we all feel like we're running a marathon that we were told was going to be a sprint. I feel like we all are in a situation where it seems as though every last moment of your day is accounted for no matter what. I think that we're all in a situation where we're on this treadmill and you need to get off every once in a while. It doesn't have to be a vacation. You don't have to go out of town. I've discovered that a 5-minute walk makes a huge difference. I wasn't giving myself that little 5-minute break for the last couple of months. This is a break for me. Talking to you is a break for me. My father's sleeping in his hospital room. There's literally nothing I can do at this moment that can help him, that can move his situation forward. I'm waiting to hear back from airlines. I'm waiting. I'm waiting while my father sleeps. And so I have a couple of minutes. So I decided I would talk to you because talking these situations out is what gets me through. But you have to, Laura, you, me, Laura, every last one of us, you have to be able to take a moment for yourself. And it's so hard to see that when you're in the thick of everything. And it doesn't have to, like I said, be a vacation. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't have to be an evening out. I've discovered that a 5-minute walk can 100% change my perspective. And so if you're struggling, as we all are in some way, shape, or form recently, do something, a little something for yourself. It could be 5-10 minutes. It could be a walk. Walking is great. There's all sorts of studies that will tell you the benefits of walking are too numerous for me to list. But taking a little walk, getting a little fresh air, even if the weather's bad. It was sleeting when I was walking once. It is not pleasant to walk in sleet, but I got to tell you, my heart was pumping, my blood was moving, it was cold. And it kind of changed my mental state for 5 minutes. I wasn't sleeting when I left the hotel. It was just the last couple of minutes of that. And I was annoyed and a little wet, but I wasn't thinking about everything that has been encroaching on my mind's every last process for the last month. It got me out of it. And I felt better prepared to deal with whatever it is that I was going to face when I walked into the hospital room and started talking to my father's doctors about what new awful complication had sprung up today. It makes a difference. So yeah, Laura's right. If you feel like you need to take some time for yourself, you are right. Because otherwise, you run the risk of being resentful. You run the risk of wearing yourself the hell out. You give and give and give of yourself. And you burn the candle at both ends. And there's a chance that, well, look, every one of us has a breaking point. And if you hit that thing that you're giving your entire life to, especially if it's something that you love, a career that you love, someone that you care for that you love, You don't want to start resenting that. Which is why I say, the cooler you are with yourself, the cooler you're going to be with other people. You got to remember to do something for yourself. You got to remember to look after yourself. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. You have to remember to look after yourself. By doing it, you will be better for the people that you care about. Hear me on this one. Anyways, I want to thank Laura. I think this was a solid topic for the second episode of the podcast, which I'm still doing into my phone. When I get back to America, I will do all the podcast things. It will be set up in an infinitely more professional way. But thank you for sharing, Laura. If you have something on your mind, if you have something you're going through, if you have something that you want to talk about, hit me up and let me know. At ADSXE on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, at ADSXE. And, well, we'll talk it through. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you for being a part of my radio family. As always, this time that you and I spend together, it's the best part of my day every single day. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do it all over again. Have a great one. Later.